Love to see all of the conversation. Hello there. Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Mastering Web Development Efficiency, Automate and Scale Your Agency. My name is Paige. I'm here just to be the eyes and the ears throughout the presentation. I'll be navigating and organizing any audience questions that arise throughout. Before we kick off the webinar today, I want to address just a few housekeeping items. First, a reminder that we are recording this webinar. After the webinar is complete, we'll be sharing it with all the registrants via email. Secondly, should you have any questions for the speakers during the course of the presentation, please feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll be covering a lot of content today, so we likely won't be able to get to all of your questions, but don't be afraid to ask them throughout. Finally, we've got a large audience with us today, and we would love to hear some feedback from the crowd. If you haven't already, pop in the chat and let us know what is your must-have plugin when building a WordPress site. I'm seeing a lot of ACF Pro, Yoast, I love this. Gravity Forms, wow. Oh yeah, lots of ACF Pro, I love that. I love seeing all the interaction. I think our hosts and panelists would agree with a lot of your favorite plugins. But with all of that being said, let's get to the good stuff. I'm going to hand the mic over to our co-host and moderator for today to kick off the presentation. Isaiah, you are up.
Thank you so much, Paige, and thank you everyone for joining our agency optimization webinar. This will actually be one of our first installments of an agency webinar series, so thanks for joining us, and we have a lot of good content curated for you guys. I'm Isaiah. I lead our agency partners team, and I'll be co-hosting. A lot of y'all know Brian, who's one of our principal WordPress advocates. Next slide. Just wanted to outline what we could expect in the first half. We'll have some presentations by Brian Gardner on optimizing web development, and then in our second half, we'll have our panel Q&A with some of our industry experts. So as you can see, we're joined today by Web Dev Studios, New City, and ConvertIv. And as Paige mentioned, as always, pop some of your questions live into the chat for us, and we'll be sure to address them. So to kick us off, I wanted to share just from an agency partner's perspective, next slide, some of the common questions we often get from you guys are, okay, how do we optimize our site performance, workflow? How do we automate tasks? What should I price my services at? How can I acquire more customers? And then the big one is always, what are my competitors doing, right? But in this first installment of our series, we wanted to focus on why should you optimize and automate your workflow? So to set the stage, I wanted to share some key industry insights and tailor it to our audience. The first one, okay, our research shows that web development projects are becoming more complex in nature, right? So you as an agency must adapt to stay competitive and meet changing client expectations, here's the biggie, without sacrificing quality. Secondly, data shows that, of course, time is your most valuable resource, but automation has bought our agencies back a lot of time. So automation allows you to focus on the work that actually matters. So we'll talk about reusable block themes, right, and how that enables you to move quickly shortly here. And then thirdly, automation is going to allow you to minimize errors and delays, and again, ensure consistent quality across your projects. Last piece of info I'll share is our data shows that automated updates and security checks reduce risk significantly in terms of performance, in terms of security concerns, and lastly, just costly technical issues. So here's my question I'd like you guys to ponder on. What is one process in your agency that can be optimized today to save time, reduce risk, and help you scale more effectively? Now I'm going to take it a step further and challenge you. Let's put it pen to paper, write it down, right? I want to make sure this is a productive use of our time. And then let's implement the one thing from our conversation today. Now I'd like to invite Brian one of our principal WordPress advocates, to share more in detail about WordPress block themes and how it can unlock your agency's scalability. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Isaiah. Real quick, I put this in the chat just as a reminder. The Zoom default setting for chat, it goes to hosts and panelists. If you want everyone to see your question or whatnot, be sure to switch that to everyone so that we can all see as well. When I was asked to be part of this panel, I got really excited, and I'll explain to you why. But let me give you a little bit introduction to who I am. As Isaiah mentioned, I am Brian Gardner. I am a principal WordPress advocate here at WP Engine. In a couple of weeks, I'll be celebrating my 3-year anniversary. But I am not new to WordPress. I have been building WordPress things since 2006. Some of you may know I am the founder of StudioPress, the co-creator of the Genesis framework, which was acquired just over 6 years ago by WP Engine. I did not come here, and I'll tell you why, because it sets the table for what I'm about to show you. When Matt Mullenweg talked about the Gutenberg project and essentially what came in WordPress 5.0, our team at Copyblogger Media, the parent company over StudioPress, was a little bit unsure about the future of WordPress. It meant a radical change in the way we do things, in the way websites are built, and all of that. And so we weren't quite sure what we wanted to do and if we were ready to invest as a team. So we decided to sell StudioPress. But shortly after, as the 5.0 version shipped into WordPress, and I started to observe, not from the sidelines, because I was never out of the game, but as I started to observe how WordPress was evolving and the direction in which it was going, it was more than just, lips from Matt about what it could be. And I started to see it on my computer screen, as we all did, take shape. Now, of course, it's taken us 5 or so years to get to the point where it's at now. But having been in WordPress for almost 20 years, I can honestly say I have never been more excited about WordPress than I am today. And that is a pretty big statement, considering there's been some really good times in WordPress over the years. But I am so excited about the direction of WordPress, where it currently is at. And a lot of that has to do with, like I said, what I'm about to say. So let me tell you a real quick story before I get started with sharing my screen and kind of walking through some things. I remember, as we all know, WordPress open source software, right? What that means is that the community and folks like that can contribute. You can contribute. We can contribute. We all can contribute to the direction of the software. I have generally always made it my sort of MO to align myself with the way WordPress does things and try to rely as least possible on third-party things, proprietary add-ons, and so on. And here's an example why. Many, many years ago, there was this thing called Tim Thumb. It was a PHP script that handled image resizing. It was a third-party thing. A lot of the sort of bigger themes and stuff like that incorporated this script into their thing. Let's just be lazy and do this thing because it does a thing. And what happened after that was there was a security exploit within that script, which affected hundreds of thousands of sites. I remember to this day, when Nathan Rice and I were building Genesis Framework, I remember I was at a Chase parking lot in Schaumburg, Illinois, and we had the conversation. We had implemented Tim Thumb into Genesis, and we were about to ship it. Right around that time, WordPress itself built in functionality that handled image resizing. And I remember to this day, I said, Nathan, I know we spent a lot of time incorporating this, but I feel like adopting the WordPress way, so to speak, it's kind of a ubiquitous statement that we throw around. I think we need to pull out this third-party dependency and just default to with what WordPress does. And to this day, and when we did that, and shortly after we did that, we released it, and that's when the Tim Thumb thing happened. My point here is that much of what I'm going to go into is really talking about WordPress out of the box, WordPress core, and why I embrace this sort of mentality. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is, a lot of this is around, block themes, and you may have heard of Gutenberg, which is now the experimental plugin that brings features into core. And so block-based themes now are what a lot of people, including many agencies, hear about, don't want to touch because it's icky, it's new, it introduces new workflows. But I'm here to tell you that, in my opinion, based on what I've seen, based on what I've known over the years, the way WordPress is going does a couple things. One, it eliminates the need to use, we'll just say, third-party page building systems. I'll stop there. What it also allows you to do is expedite workflow increase productivity and really sort of set yourself, if you're a freelancer, your small business or your agency up for success to build websites quicker and with probably better margins at that point. So I'm going to go through just an overview. This is today, my involvement in this is a little bit more from a 30,000 foot level. I want to introduce just some general ideas for you all to think about as it pertains to your business, your agency, and just think through some ways of how you can use this into your workflow. And I got really excited when I was asked to do this because Mitch Cantor, who's on our panel, is actually an example of what I will show you what to do. And I'll let Mitch speak to that and how they handle that at Web Dev Studios. And so it's kind of fun when I saw his name pop up. I was like, this is exactly why I did what I did. Okay. So I am going to go into, I use Local. We have a WP Engine has a development tool called Local, localwp.com. You probably have heard about it. I use it often. I use it to test things. I use it to play around and see what's new. So I'm going to start sharing my screen and just kind of walk through some things. I'm going to walk through like an overview of what is a block theme, sort of what it's comprised of, a little bit about kind of how these pieces work together. Again, this is not really about how to do all of this stuff. This is really more about why to do all of this stuff. And then we can connect afterwards if you or your agency want to like figure out what does this really mean for me. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so for the sake of the purpose of this, I am going to be talking about a theme that I have freely available on WordPress.org. I think Paige has the link to this. It's called Powder Zero. And I'm going to use this one because I really baked this down to a very, very basic theme. I have another theme called Powder. It has a lot of style variations and block patterns and all of these things. But for the sake of this, what I'm really encouraging people to do is to basically create their own version of a base theme. You know, as agencies who have teams and stuff like that, development chops, you guys have the ability to sort of build your own and maintain your own, because what that also does, we know in the land of digital sharecropping, it allows you to control your own destiny. And so I have installed a local install called Powder Zero, and I'm going to go into that right here. So just to give you a little bit of table setting, hopefully everybody can see the screen properly. If I need to zoom in a little bit, I can. I have two themes installed on this right now. We've got Powder Zero, which is the very, very basic theme, and then Powder, because I'll showcase some things later. But I want to show you just how easy it is to fork a theme. But before we get there, let me go into the GitHub repository. Paige also has this link. She'll drop also in the chat. So this is, I just wanted to kind of give like an overview. This is like a 30,000 foot view of the components of this Powder Zero theme. Those obviously similar to building classic PHP themes. Most of this stuff will start to make sense. You've got a functions file, you've got a style sheet. Something maybe new to you is what's called theme JSON. And this is a very powerful and very interesting sort of newer technology in the way in which we introduce styles and settings into block themes, which basically make their way and correspond to the UI that we see in the block and site editor. This is where we define the colors and the spacing and the fonts and the sizing in there through theme JSON. But for now, I just kind of go through the organizational structure. Inside of a block theme, you have a templates folder, which I'll click on and pop open. And much like the traditional WordPress hierarchy, you'll see that these files are named pretty similarly to what you would expect. Difference here is that they're HTML files versus PHP files. And so you've got your 404, archive, index, page, search, and single. These are kind of like the basic templates. You can obviously copy these and clone them and do like category and author and kind of go a little bit more granular. But for the sake of starting at like a basic level, I've just supplied these basic templates inside this theme. Backing out to the theme root, you'll see that there's a patterns folder. This is where the theme patterns are housed. In this particular theme, I only have a handful of ones. They're actually just used inside of the templates, mainly for localization purposes, because these are PHP files. If you build a pattern library, which I'll get to in a minute, you could have hundreds of patterns inside of your theme. And so again, we'll talk about that part of it shortly, but every block-based theme has a patterns folder. We've also got a parts folder, and this is kind of a little bit tricky, but this is generally where you've got like your header and footer. They're called template parts. And so inside of your template file, you would have like a call to like the header. And I'll just click on this really quickly. You'll see what this part does is it says, hey, go fetch the header pattern that comes with the theme and then use that code. Again, I'm going kind of quickly through this. I don't expect you to understand how to build a block theme immediately, but when I show you how to fork a block theme, you'll really like how that goes. Also, inside of the themes root, we have an assets folder. If you have patterns that bring in images, you can store them in here. In this case, you can see here at the top, this is how I embed the outfit Google font into the theme. You put it into this sort of directory, and then it's being called in the theme JSON file. So again, this is a little bit of a quick high level overview. Again, you've got your functions file, you've got your theme screenshot, stuff that you would typically see in a theme. So it's similar to a classic theme, not exactly the same thing. What I would encourage you to do either on this, and I think Paige has the link to these themes on the WordPress.org. Again, they're both open source and free. I encourage you to go to either one of these and just download them, as we all have over the course of like learning how this new system works. We just download things in open files and see how they're built, see how they come together. And so what I encourage and why I am so excited about WordPress right now is with the ideas of block-based components and templates and patterns in particular, and especially as it applies to agencies. I really get excited about the fact that an agency, a sophisticated agency, can develop a library of block patterns. And patterns are basically a collection of blocks, usually wrapped in a group. So if you think about it, like a header could be a pattern, a footer could be a pattern. You could have a hero section that's sort of wrapped in a group that's got like a heading, some paragraph text. Maybe it's in a cover image and it's using buttons. You can wrap that all together. You can build that out once and put that into your library and have quick access because it's very copy and pastable code. And when you do that, you establish, over the course of time, you can establish a library of patterns that your agency can quickly just grab from. Similar to the way, and I'm kind of revealing where I'm headed, is also, have a corresponding version of that inside of Figma, which I'll get to. So backing all the way up, so we've got Powder Zero, very, very base theme. This theme is intended to be forked and to be used by hundreds or thousands of people as their own theme. The beauty of open source is that I create this theme. You can change it to whatever you want. You could use it as your own. You can strip my name from the credits. You can do whatever you want. That's intended to be this way. So I am going to be, for the sake of showing how to do this, using the Create Block Theme plugin. This is also a link that Paige has, a free plugin created by the WordPress.org team. The idea behind the Create Block Theme plugin is to allow folks to go in and to use the backend of WordPress, the block and site editor, to do things, to make changes to a theme, to set things up, and then with one click, export it to a theme that can be used. So the Create Block Theme plugin, I don't know to what extent this functionality will fully go into WordPress core. I did talk to Rich Tabor about that a couple of weeks ago on the Press This podcast. There's some functionality baked in, but I'm just going to go back into my install here. I've got the Create Block Theme plugin active, and you can see there's an item right here that says Create Block Theme. So I'm going to click that and see what we can do. So with Powder Zero as the active theme, we could do a couple of things. If I went into the editor and changed some colors, maybe added a font and tweaked some templates, I could then just export the Powder Zero theme and those changes into a new theme. So that's what this first option does. It says, hey, let's take this all as a new, it retains the name Powder Zero. So like if you were just doing a quick client site, you could just do it that way. You could do another thing, which is create a new blank theme. This is a little bit scary because this literally creates a brand new theme from scratch. You name it, it creates the theme into your theme directory. It really has unformatted templates. The styles need to be set from scratch. And so if you really wanted to build your own base theme from scratch and you said, I want an open canvas, you would use the Create Block Theme plugin. You would do create new blank theme. And it would create I think it's just like an index file, like a style sheet with a header at the top, nothing else. Theme JSON file, it's basically blank until you start using the site editor to set up your colors and your fonts, because then what it does is it saves it to that theme JSON file auto-magically. Then you can just export that theme and take it wherever you want. And so So there is the option, as you can see here, create a child theme. We're not going to go there because that's not what our intent is. This one right here, this create a clone of Powder Zero is what I encourage everyone to do, whether it's with Powder Zero, whether it's with the default 2024 theme. WP Engine has a theme called Frost, which is has a few style variations and a handful of patterns that I also designed. But if you really want to start from scratch and learn how this can work from you, I would encourage you to try this, and I'll show you how this works. So you're going to create a clone, and because I love winter, I'm going to call my theme Avalanche. So I'm basically cloning Powder Zero because I want to steal from my work, right? And so I'm just going to say custom theme. Oops. I'll just do that. We'll just say, I'm going to click a button, and it says theme created successfully. The editor will now load. So what it does is it puts you right into the site editor. I'm going to actually back out of it to show you what happened. If I go to Appearance Themes, you can see now that it created this theme called Avalanche. It activates that theme. And I'm going to actually go into this. This is my local hard drive. You can see now this is my theme directory on my local install. So I have Powder Zero. This is now Avalanche. And what it does, I will pop this open. And then I think I can zoom this in. Whoops. You can see what it did is it went through and basically replaced all instances of the Powder or Powder Zero references and text domains, and it adds Avalanche there instead. So you've got theme name Avalanche, you've got text domain Avalanche. I'll even pop open the functions file. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Even the function names get changed to Avalanche. So you could effectively in one click take a base theme. If you try it and you like the way it looks and you want to kind of use that as your own, you can clone that theme, call it whatever you want, and then just run with it. Then it's your theme. And why I encourage people to do this versus the sort of, call it the archaic way, because it's still currently possible, is like the parent-child theme thing. Then you're still relying on, like, for instance, Powder Zero. Anything Brian Gardner, wants to do with that theme, you would inherit those changes if you just create like a child theme. And because, design and dev inside of an agency is big and systems and workflows are huge, I encourage you to own your own theme. Find some time, Friday afternoon or over the weekend, have some of your folks like download a theme, start to understand how it works, and then clone the theme, make it your own, and then kind of start building on that. Now, and Paige, really quickly, let me just check in and just stay on time because I love block-based stuff and I could talk an hour on this. I don't want to talk too much. So how are we doing on time? Let me just take a quick time and questions really quickly if we're okay. Let me know about roughly how much I have left.
We're doing well. Damon's been answering some questions, as have some of the panelists in the chat. So we're good. We've got about 10 minutes left of your section.
Perfect. Okay, good. Any really quick burning questions like you just totally don't get, just throw them in the chat. Paige, feel free to interrupt me at that point because I'm going to kind of go on to the next thing, which is the idea of, patterns and using Figma and kind of getting to the next part. But I just want to make sure I don't go too fast. So I'm going to just keep moving on in the meantime. And I'm going to go here. So you may have heard of this thing called, I'm going to just go to my own site and click on patterns. And as an example, I'm just going to go to Hero. Okay, so patterns, as I said, are kind of a collection of blocks grouped together. You can see the Powder main theme, not Zero, but the main theme has what are called patterns. And they're like these insertable pieces of site building stuff, right? So this one is an image. It's got some stuff. There's a black version of it. And there's just different, I'll just kind of scroll quickly. You can see that, you have this whole section. And this is why, friends, I get so excited about WordPress, because the way in which building this kind of a section repeatably throughout an entire site using HTML and CSS alone was cumbersome. If you knew what you were doing, you could do it quickly. But the idea of being able to, and I'll walk through this just because I want to show how powerful this is. The ability to like insert this and change this and have these things set into like your agency library is huge, because then what you can do, and we'll get here in a second, if you have corresponding Figma files that that correspond to these patterns that are available quickly to deploy, you could effectively just send a client this whole, Figma canvas and say, hey, pick your header, pick your footer, pick your content section, build the site. And you could literally build that out in WordPress in 30 seconds if you have corresponding patterns and the Figma components all set. That's what excites me about WordPress. And I'll show you how quickly it is to insert. I'll show you how quickly it is to change and alter that. And so the hope here is to just inspire you to at least take the next step in what is block-based WordPress? How can this work for our agency? Why should we invest time in, maybe shedding the proprietary third party that we pay for, that we don't have control over, that sort of thing? This is all core WordPress. Everything I'm showing you right here is core WordPress, with the exception of my theme just being a theme, but that has to be. But you can fork that theme and make it your own. So you can control the destiny. And I'll let Mitch talk about that here, like when we get to that section. So really quickly, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to get out of the Avalanche theme that I created. I'm going to actually activate the Powder main theme. And to show you very quickly what this looks like, if you go into the site editor and click on patterns, you can see here that all of the patterns that are inside of the Powder theme, there's 104 of them, and you can categorize them. So like, for instance, these are all the call to action patterns. These are all the content patterns, just things laid out differently. You've got headers, footers, hero, even pricing tables. You imagine how long it would take to have built that from scratch and how hard it is to like change things and customize things. Well, watch what we do here. I'm going to create a new page and we're just going to call this patterns. I'm going to go up here to the inserter. You can see patterns. And I want to very quickly just do something to the effect of, let's just say we'll do this. We're going to insert that. Then I want maybe one of these. And I'm just going to click through and say, now we want a pricing table. People love us, so we're going to show some testimonials. And what I've just done in a matter of 4 clicks is, let me open this page up in a new tab. We got the header. Let me actually just change the template really quickly. Powder has a, I don't want full screen mode. There we go. Okay, so I am just changing the template very quickly to what's called no title, which removes the title. This is the title here. So if I refresh this, you'll see that it goes away. So I've just built this page right before your very eyes in just a few clicks. And so what's great about WordPress now, this is your favorite feature. This is called list view. This allows you to sort of see the components of your page. And if for some reason you decide you want your testimonials above, you just select it, move it up, hit save. And now that whole section, and maybe you're like, well, yeah, I want maybe a gray background here. So we're going to actually do something like this. And the text I want all to be, I'm sorry, I'm still in the wrong. Let me go over here to text, and maybe I want it all to be purple. And so you could save it. And this is sort of like kind of where you start to see the power of block-based WordPress, is where you can create things. And here's another, I'll do this one because this is fun. You've created a pricing table. You've used the pattern that comes with Powder, but you're like, you know what? I actually need an extra column. And so I can take this and I can just say duplicate, and I'll hit save. We'll go down to the pricing table, and all of a sudden it just duplicates the column and adds the 4th column. But then you say, I want this column to be moved over. Now you start to see the power of this. I'm going to jump into the Figma part of it now because I know I'm going to talk too long. And so I want to get to that point. And so let me get this bar out of the way. So, and Paige also has a link. So I'm going to show you, I've gone through and I've used Figma. I've created sort of, and there's no current auto magic way where you can create all these things and say, hey, just put this into my theme. There's design tokens. Damon can maybe speak to it a little bit. I've spent less time learning how to do that, but so let me zoom in. And so think about this as an agency perspective. If you pair your design and development team, if your designer says, I'm going to create a bunch of patterns inside of Figma, I'm going to design them, we're going to use fonts or whatever, and then your development team basically then just replicates those in WordPress patterns and puts them into your, we'll just call them like your WDS, Web Dev Studio's base theme, right? You fork to Powder, you've created your own, you've got a base theme that you can quickly build sites with because your clients have kind of come through here and said, I want a dark header with a button here, and I want this hero section. This is sort of now where you can, as an agency, start to build this library of, you've got the visuals here. Again, these are a collection of footer patterns. All of these are found within the Powder theme and can be added with one click. So you can kind of quickly, mock up some stuff, change some colors. These are the hero patterns. And so my ultimate hope is that you understand that block-based WordPress, the direction that it's going and where we're currently at, it's truly amazing. And it really liberates you from dependencies on systems that could potentially change their licensing or kick you out or, do all of these things. And all of them serve their point, right? Because up until Gutenberg and all of this, there was no way to build, page build inside of WordPress, which is why that market evolved. Why I got excited was as a WordPress sort of advocate and purist is once WordPress started incorporating ways to do that natively, that's when I got really excited and realized, okay, there's this software will become extremely powerful, especially for agencies. Now, I don't want to paint the picture that it's super rosy because we're still working through some things. We're sort of at a point now where we're doing, some user interface sort of changes and tweaks to the way things are being done. But where we're at right now is just at a really good place. And so Paige should have the link. There's a zip file for this Figma where you can just download it and literally just drag the .fig file into your Figma, and you will have everything that you see here so you can play around with it and see how I've done it. This library is a little bit outdated relative to the current Powder theme because I just haven't had a chance to go in and do an update, but this will give you a place to start. You could use this and rename it and do whatever you want to with it. Nothing's proprietary. There's no copyright on any of this stuff. So again, this is all open source. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'm sure I've missed some things that I wanted to say, but as I get excited about this stuff, I talk fast and I lose focus. And so I hope, if anything, you see that this block-based version of our future with WordPress isn't as bad as some people might think. And a lot of the blocks have responsive controls built in or just are handled, columns stack on mobile, things like that. So it's pretty solid. So I would encourage you to look into it. The links have been provided. Feel free to connect with me also personally. If your agency is really interested, we want to set up a Zoom call. I'd be happy to kind of jump in and talk more specifically to your agency needs because I really feel strongly about this. And I think it could expedite your workflow, increase ROI, all the things that if I ran that sentence through ChatGPT, it would make you feel good about. So thank you for that. And again, I'm very accessible. It's my job to advocate for WordPress. So you're not putting me out by getting on a Zoom call. It's actually what I get paid to do. And it's what I want to do. So that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to our team to take the next step, and I will stop sharing my screen. And thanks again.
Thank you, Brian. That was amazing. And audience, please be sure to give us your feedback. Love seeing the engagement, but as Brian said, if you want more of this content, let us know, and we'll bring Brian back for some more. So now we wanted to open it up for our esteemed panel. Our audience, just to give a little context, right, is a mix of kind of early stage agencies. I see in the comments some of you are just getting started, and then we have some more mature agencies as well. What's beautiful about agency paths and WordPress as a whole, there is no one path, right? So for this, I wanted to open up the first question to Damon, Yvonne, Mitch, Mike. Would you guys all mind briefly sharing your unique journeys with us, right? What were the challenges that you faced while scaling your agency, and how did you address them to keep growing efficiently?
I can jump in there. And to give a little background, so I'm a developer advocate with WP Engine, but prior to being a developer advocate, I worked in several different WordPress agencies. So I was a front-end developer. So a lot of my passion during those years was really kind of seeing how to take when you're running an agency, you start to see patterns. I created this site, I did X, Y, and then I created the next site for the next client, and I did X, Y again. So you start pulling those together and just trying to create, frictionless systems that you can save time for the next project. And so I think that's, that's kind of where I'm here. But, a little background, I guess I've been in the WordPress space 10 plus years, I guess. And yeah, I'll kick it over to some of the other panelists. I'm sure they have some really great input.
Happy
Yeah,
to chime in. Or
go ahead.
Miss, you want to take it?
No, you first. Go ahead.
Good. Yeah, but I mean, I guess as far as journeys go, working in a kind of fairly distributed company, like we're a boutique consultancy out of Boston, and I say out of Boston, but like I'm out of Split, Croatia. And like I think there's like maybe it's the Mediterranean in me, but like I've always been a little too lazy to deal with the repetitive stuff. So like really, really double down on automation and kind of figuring out how to avoid the grunt work. And I think like over the years that accumulated, like WordPress has been like a tool of choice for us for over a decade now. And like most of the folks have even longer kind of horizons and just kind of working with the platform. And yeah, like I mean, like we've recently been really kind of doubling down on the usage of design systems and kind of figuring out how to kind of bring that into our work. Our kind of design system team has like put a very thorough basic kind of design system that we reuse across projects, and we kind of built on top of that, and finally we kind of created a small open source tool called Handoff that we kind of ourselves use, and we figured like we'd share it with everybody and like see what comes out of it. We love collaboration ourselves. Yeah, that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, kind of similar for myself. I've kind of run the gambit when it comes to WordPress at this point. I was a freelancer for almost a decade. Started working with the educational space for Vanderbilt University, moved into more agency work as a developer, and then have moved into my recent role here as the director of engineering here at WebDev. And seeing how WordPress has evolved back when I started from no themes, no plugins, just WordPress the hard way, right? To almost, just 20 years later, seeing where all it's going and seeing, not just the market share, which is a big number everybody in WordPress likes to use, but the community and how everyone's solving the same problems very similarly is always fun. And so for us, being able to find a foundation that works well with not just our clients and being able to build really cool things for them, but also a way that we can be able to, and I've mentioned this, or I will mention it kind of elsewhere, being able to kind of not widgetize, because that's a bad word and it means that it's like samey same, but being able to offload a lot of the heavy lifting of some of the day-to-day mundane things that we do in a WordPress site. And that allows us to focus our energy and the client's budget and their needs onto the things that are a unique selling point for a client or a unique factor. Every site's going to have the same kind of things and the same forms and all of that. What is it really that makes a client stand out and worthwhile? What's going to set them apart from their competitors? All of that other stuff having already been kind of done and set aside, now we can focus our strategy and brain power to doing that and really kind of honing in on what's going to set a client apart from the competition. Block themes, patterns, that was a really good starting point for us as far as that goes. We were on our own version of WD underscores, which is a fork of underscores for a while. That hasn't been updated in a couple of years now, which for, web development terms is an eternity at this point. And we use that opportunity as our starting point for, let's really dive into full site editing and Gutenberg and block themes and see where we go. Somebody shared the link to our block theme, and I can talk about that later, but I'll let some of the other people talk now to stop bogarting the conversation.
Yeah, I had a similar path as Mitch and Damien. Like I was in higher education for quite a while, and then I moved over to the agency side. Us being like a small agency, I think it's important to like really try to take advantage and leverage block themes, much like Brian said about his Tim Thumb example. Taking advantage of like all that development effort that's going into WordPress and allowing you to create your sites, your patterns much quicker, and then like again echoing what Mitch said, and taking that extra development time and effort to making custom components, custom blocks, and just really leaning into what WordPress is allowing you out of the box. There's also another technique we've tried is getting the values in front of our designers very early in the process of like what things are being able to be set in theme JSON. Brian touched on like the spacing, the fonts, and whatnot. So our designers are working with those values from a very early, like even before the design is created. So it's basically getting the developer and designers on the same page, speaking the same language, and people call that design tokens. So.
Yeah, thanks everyone for kind of sharing your unique journeys there, right? And I want to hand it over to Brian just to unpack and dig a little deeper on some of the more technical workflow / automation things you guys have implemented over time.
You caught me right in the middle of trying to catch up on all the Q&A, and I'm still like reeling from my presentation and trying to like think things through. I was just trying to see if there was anything here specifically I could just hop on with the Q&A really quickly. But again, as Mike said, and even if you're a freelancer, you can, as I would, you could be the design and dev, right? Like it makes it even easier to say, I'm going to design my own system. And the way WordPress block system works is it allows you to choose or define which units that you want to use. Like if you're like a percentage based person, sometimes designers like to use percentages for spacing or rems or pixels or whatever. And so one of the other things, quick divergence, that I really love about WordPress now is that it has built-in fluid typography and fluid spacing, which means you can set up a system, like a design system now. And I've talked extensively about this. In fact, Rich and I, and if I can find it quickly, I'll grab the link and drop it in the chat to the Press This podcast episode, which aired last week. We talked about using WordPress as a design system where you can say, Powder happens to like really pull in all of the Tailwind colors. I didn't want to think about colors as a designer, so I created a system that then uses the Tailwind color system. And so you can do things like set up fluid typography, which means, it automatically responds in the browser. You can set like, it's kind of like the clamp system where you can say this medium font needs to be 24 pixels, but scale down to a certain point in responsive view. So why I get excited, one of the hundreds of reasons, is that you can set up as an agency, as a freelancer, as a product person, even really a system. And I saw some questions about like kind of turning things over to clients and stuff like that. And even through theme JSON, and this is a little more granular, but there's lots of documentation around this. You can turn things off inside of the editor via theme JSON. You can disable the ability for a customer or a client to pick custom colors or custom anything for that matter, where you can say, you're working within this box. We've set up your colors. We've set up your fonts. You can't add them. You can't pick your own color, things like that. And so we see this now in WordPress. So it's kind of what Nick Diego talks about, kind of curating the editor experience, where you can set this up and turn this over to your client. And even the content, even the patterns themselves can be locked down, where you can say, we've designed this page, we've built this page, we're going to lock this all. So all you can do is edit the text, because we don't want you clicking around and nuking patterns and layers and parts of your site. We're going to lock this all down, and all you can do is change the text or, update the copy or whatever. So I don't know if Isaiah, if that really got to like, wow, it was cute to do, but it was really top of mind. And I felt that it was really important for people to hear that kind of stuff. So start with that.
If I could jump in too, like we've been really looking at block bindings, the API that's coming with that too. And so being able to lock down all of the stuff that's coming in with the editor to the clients is one thing. we've been really looking as forward as we can to being able to see how block bindings can work with kind of more traditional workflows. Like, for example, building an ACF panel inside of the backend of WordPress that powers custom fields, which then powers the block bindings. And so we can build all of these patterns for clients, let them fill in the blanks with the ACF that gets saved to custom fields, and let those be powering, let those kind of power all of the content that's in there. And so it's, a lot of the kind of hesitation with moving over to Gutenberg versus something like an ACF builder, or even something like a page builder, is just having that kind of Mad Libs approach where you have all of the content there, the client can fill everything out, and it's very easy for them to use, versus teaching them the new version of the editor. And I think this is going to be a really nice middle ground approach that gives you the power of something like the block builder to be able to run pages that are custom with patterns, be able to kind of assemble things. But then on those pages that need kind of more locked down, like you said, still being able to give flexibility on content creation, which ultimately I think, we think for ourselves as developers, but being able to think for the user as well and say, how can we make this as easy as possible for them to fill in their own content? It's kind of fun to kind of look ahead a little bit and see what's coming, and get really excited about that as well.
I did see a question that I want to address really quickly. When you fork a theme, when you effectively clone a theme and make it your own, if anything happens to the theme it came from, you don't see those changes, and that's kind of by design, because you basically just cloned it and then you said you made a copy of it and now it's your own. The parent-child theme thing is sort of when you would potentially inherit changes from a parent theme. But to be perfectly honest, and I'll warn you, I like to change things up, and I'm very opinionated with my stuff. You may not want to inherit the changes I decide to make. So again, Mitch, can I ask you on the spot? Because I loved the night. I remember where I was when I was like, oh, somebody forked Powder on GitHub. Who was this? Because you could see who forks it. And I went and I saw WDS and I was like, no way. And then we got on, like, talked about that or whatever. Like, can you just talk through kind of the process, and more importantly, like the why behind what you guys did and the intent, and like what you've done with it since, so that people can maybe kind of hear a story around how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but we've been using WD underscores, which is our version of the underscores themes, for well before I've gotten to Web Dev Studios. And I'd used WDS even not working for Web Dev Studios. I was Lisa's technical editor for WordPress for Dummies. She kept me kind of in the loop with how things were going with the agency. And then when the management position opened, I kind of slid in there, and the rest is history. So, when I got there, Web Dev, WD underscores at that point, regular, like automatic underscores, hadn't been updated for several years at this point. And it's even gone without updates now. And again, it's like dog years, right? It's like an eternity on the internet. And so we knew that, like, we needed something that would be a little more future forth for us, because we wanted to be able to really take whatever theme we were using into kind of the future, with all of the new stuff that's happening with Gutenberg and all of that. And so when we started looking around for inspiration, obviously Frost and the work that you were working on was really high on our list, because it had kind of started doing things with patterns and blocks that, again, were on that kind of cutting edge. And so you and I had our conversation, we forked the theme, and at this point, it was a great starting point for us. It's basically become the theme of Theseus at this point. We've kind of taken everything and made it our own, which is what it's sort of built to do. We added in our own build processes. We've added in runtimes during the composer and NPM stage. We've added in our assertions for GitHub to be able to do checks for PHP versioning and linting and CSS formatting and all of those different things. But it really kind of served as a great point for us to really sit down and say, are we going to work with WordPress as it was and risk being left behind? Or are we going to go forward, for better or for worse, regardless of what's happening, and embrace what WordPress is offering, knowing that we will be kind of walking with them, and that we would be sharing that experience with users and other developers and other agencies that are doing that. And it made the most sense at that point to walk forward. 6 months prior, we were talking with an enterprise level client, one of the biggest builds we'd ever done as an agency. And we had that same conversation. And the answer was no, we are not going to walk forward at that point. But even in the chance of, even in 6 months' time, it was amazing how things had changed and modified and morphed itself. And we looked back and we said, you know, we made the right decision then. That's not the right decision now. It's time for us to embrace this and really start moving forward as an agency.
Thanks for sharing, Mitch. And I wanted us to unpack this a little more. I'm looking at the comments in chat, the questions. A lot of it has to do with theme JSON, things like that. Can I kick it over to New City and Convertive? Question and a follow-up, right? How has theme JSON changed how New City and Convertive work with themes? And maybe specifically, what are some of the pros and cons in maintaining style tokens?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think yeah, it's changed our dev design handoff process. Like I said earlier, getting those values that theme JSON is able to handle in front of the designer, and the designer is using those same values. So we're speaking the same language. The designer and developer are speaking the same language, which helps me build our components and patterns faster. It helps the quality assurance process. So like when we're getting design review of things that are built, like we're again talking that same language. Like this spacing needs to be medium, or this spacing needs to be large, or this needs to be the primary font. Those kind of things, those kind of conversations. Yeah, and so like kind of a challenge to that process though is like when you need to feel the need to jump into like custom CSS, you're then working with a CSS variable, which I have like a few creature comforts about like some of the plugins I use in VS Code, like highlighting, syntax highlighting, for color values. The tooling hasn't quite caught up there yet. So maybe if people have like a plugin suggestion for that too, is like being able to highlight those CSS variables in that way. So there's some trade-off for that. But again, like the components you can build with the site editor, full site editing they're much quicker to build now. You don't find yourself writing as much custom CSS, or at least I don't.
Yeah, and I mean for us, I mean there's no question, where the WordPress road takes us, right? Like we're happy to embrace it, but we tried it a couple of times over the years, since it's introduction and it's like a Gutenberg plugin. And we've sort of been pushed away. Like we have a pretty well developed kind of ACF workflow that we kind of migrated over to blocks and whatnot. But like there's a lot of nuances and a lot of kind of connection we made with the design team to make the whole process efficient, right? And sort of we were in the process of like renegotiating all of that, like establishing new standards and like doing all the heavy stuff that Mitch kind of mentioned, right? Like to make it all kind of come together. And like we feel recently like we've been really hitting in stride and like making progress there, as like new features have enabled us to kind of deal with things like mega menus, right? Like some basic stuff. And like just kind of being, our workflow has always been kind of about variables and like pulling things out of Figma in that sense. And like that really enabled us to kind of really think about this in an efficient way. And like Theme JSON really represents a good and central place to deal with all of that. The question is just like how do you connect the dots in between, and like what does your build process kind of look like at that point, right? And yeah, like we are starting to ship kind of complete full site editing themes kind of this year, and like we're really kind of confident that like the benefits for the end user are really there, right? Like that's why we are doing this, is like because the editors get all this power to create, which in the previous sort of iteration of like what we did like was somewhat limited, right? And we're happy to kind of pull through and like embrace the future.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. And we have a lot of questions. We'd probably recap in an email and probably save it for future sessions as well. I think there's a lot of questions around full site editing, the future of modern WordPress, all of the above. But for the sake of time, wanted to wrap up some of the key points we kind of talk about and then leave you guys with something to walk away with as well. So Paige, if you wouldn't mind sharing our deck once more. But panelists, just want to say thank you so much for your key insights, right? Thank you for your time, and same goes for the audience as well. Agencies, you joined us because you wanted to simply find opportunities to do better, right? And as the industry evolves, WP Engine and all of our WordPress partners here, we're here to help. So just to summarize a couple key points, today we kind of talked about how do you streamline your development and use block themes to save time, right? And all of the different agency partners we have here today, they share different automation that they've implemented to just help them scale over time. We want you guys to be able to reduce all the manual work, mundane tasks, so that you can focus on what's important. That's just growing your business. So I hope you guys all had the time to kind of maybe jot down some ideas, and we encourage you guys to implement them, right? Today we have the opportunity to maybe adopt some new ideas and adapt some of our business strategy. Let us know how we can help. Our goal here is to make sure each of you are equipped to just stay ahead of the curve. So last thing we kind of wanted to highlight is our agency partner program here. As you can see, there's a lot of resources that I believe most agencies are unaware of, right? Whether it's technical resources, number one. Number two, getting you connected to other agencies that might fill your specific skill gaps, things like that. And lastly, there is some benefit in discounted pricing, being listed in the agency directories. In essence, we're here to help you guys get more clients as well. So if interested, you'll also see this in the email recap of how to sign up for our APP program. And one thing I wanted to tag, as always, feel free to reach out to Brian on LinkedIn or formerly known as Twitter. You can reach out to myself as well. If you have any agency partner questions, my name is Isaiah Tsao, and we'll always get you in touch with your dedicated account managers or consultants here to help with operation, efficiency, automation, pricing, you name it. And I saw some questions. Yes, I already see some transcripts in there. Perfect. But we will send out a recording via email with invitation to APP and our next webinar as well. Final thing, just want to say thank you once again. There's been a huge appetite for our agency webinar series. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you at the next webinar. We're shooting for around November, sometime in Q4. Thank you once again. Cheers, everybody. Bye.